finally, a source of raw, real, and honest information on healthcare issues that matter most. Welcome to BS Free MD. From the latest medical information to how to stay sane as a doctor or a patient, no subject is taboo, no BS is allowed. Now, let's welcome your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Heinmarsh.
Well, welcome, everybody. Tonight, what we have for you is some fine spirits of a lovely discovery that I made over the weekend, where we made some friends. And we're going to get into some stories. Tim has got an amazing Florida story for you, of course.
It's potentially the most Florida story of all Florida stories.
With some medical ties to that. I have actually an Oregon medical story that is a bit more depressing. So maybe, I don't know.
Very depressing.
We'll have to throw that in, figure out where in the mix. We like to leave you laughing. And then weird medical condition of the night. Let's give you a hint. I can't control my hand.
The night.
I
think it's made up. I think the condition that you're talking about is made up. I think it's bullshit.
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 Maybe that's why. I don't know. We'll get there later. I was gonna explain that maybe that's why some people sniff other people's hair, but
no, it's because they're demented and they're president of the United States.
Anyways, all right.
That's completely different.
Well, how was the week?
Well, it's fine.
Yeah.
No, the week was good. I'm getting more used to the volume of patients we see at work. The good news is the patients are very nice.
And
I have not been sworn at once.
Nice that Tim actually was gifted a present.
Yeah, I was gifted a present, which was amazing. So I won't go into detail of the case, but I made a very strong diagnosis, which potentially saved somebody's life.
We sent him to the hospital because he needed to be there.
And it was a soft call initially and ended up being a more serious condition, and they really appreciated it. So they sent me a card. And here's the interesting thing. They sent me a card with a gift card for a $50 voucher to the liquor store. And then it got me thinking, was that because they think, did I say something about we should go for drink? I think I did. Because I said, well, we could discuss this later over drink. I think that's where it came from. Were you wearing your
Norm's liquor shirt that day?
Yeah. Or was I like jaundiced? Like, where was I shaking? Like, was there some
I'm thinking
giveaway?
It was the Norm's liquor shirt. There you go.
I don't have a Norm's liquor shirt, but Norm's could sponsor us.
I was just thinking that. Norm's, and if they sponsored us, we would just have the pick of the litter there because.
Well, we would have pick of the liver transplants because Norm's is literally.
They have everything.
Is literally.
They have
5
everything.
minutes from our house. It is 1.6 miles away.
And not only that, it is stacked to the ceiling. Like I've never seen. I thought you were exaggerating when you
I said you have to go in there and you have to witness it to believe it. It is so interesting because you move to different places in the country.
To heaven
right?
of boxes.
So if this store was in California, specifically Southern California, or in San Francisco, there's no way they would have these bottles stacked to the absolute ceiling.
I wouldn't meet code.
18 feet in the air, because even if you got a tiny earthquake, you would literally be killing people. Like you would have like this liquor avalanche of death, right? But here, it's like, well, there's storms, but everything's stormproof, so it doesn't, the building doesn't move when the wind's blowing 80 miles an hour. So we don't care. We're just going to use our space as efficiently as possible.
When the next hurricane comes.
No, but I mean, the building doesn't move.
Let's find out.
It's not like you're at the top of a skyscraper. And so I just find it intriguing because earthquakes, bad. Like, can you imagine if from 18 feet, a half gallon of
no,
Cheetos?
I cannot imagine.
It's like, what killed him? Well, alcohol killed him. Oh, I mean, he drank too much and he destroyed his liver and his health. And no. A giant bottle during an earthquake accelerated at 9.8 meters per second squared and hit him in the head and killed him.
That would be a story right up your alley for this show, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it is like strong on, like good on norms for using their space. I'm like, I sit there and I go, why do you need that much inventory in one place? And then I go, oh, that's right. You're right next to a retirement community.
You're right next to me.
That's exactly why.
We're trying
that much inventory
not to promote bad behavior,
and failing.
Yes.
Miserably.
I think.
But delightfully.
It's time to.
I don't judge.
Pass the baton, smash the pickleball back to my direction. Let me take control of this.
No, pickleball. We are a pickleball-free zone.
Well, before we get into the first story of the night, which I will take it away with, I gotta say hello and shout out to Stacy. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're raising a glass to you. It's so much fun when you join the show. It's so much fun when everybody joins the show, of course, but Stacy.
Right. Well, not everybody. Because I would assume if it was everybody, like which is 8 billion people, there would be at least probably a 4 or 5% asshole rate.
Well,
in the everybody category.
I'm willing to take that chance to get everybody here to see what happens.
Yeah. Can you imagine if you had 8 billion downloads?
That would be a lot of boosts on Facebook.
Can you imagine that? I would buy norms.
How much?
If I had 8 billion downloads, I would just buy norms.
All right. For those of you who are first time tuning in and going, what the heck is going on? What are these people even talking about? We like to bring you weird stories, weird news, and different things going on. And obviously,
jibber jabber. They have a medical association.
There you go.
Like strange diagnoses, weird things in the medical news.
Yes.
Strange and crazy things.
And Tim has a preponderance to pick stories about airplanes and pooping people. So
yes.
And if you can tie them together.
Big fan of airplanes, big fan of pooping.
That's just going to go on forever.
Mm-hmm. No, airplane crashes just fascinate me. Seriously, like honestly, it's always like aviation, and we talked about this a lot in skydiving. It's not one error; it's a series of errors. Where if you broke the link in the chain of errors, then you would survive, or the event wouldn't have happened. And that's always how it is. Yeah, I mean, generally, other than the thing that happened that we talked about last week with the 737, they may have just not tightened the bolts. It may be one thing. And if you mess up one thing bad enough, yes, you can eject a piece of the aircraft.
Yes. Well, messing up causes horrific events, downstream events, and purposefully messing up is even more horrible. And I guess I don't have this isn't that funny of a story, but it's hit the news. And for those of our friends back in homeland of Oregon, I'm sure you've all heard about this big story down out of Medford, Oregon. Just popped out in January, although I think the first the story broke it says December 29th, happy end of 2023. Well, the police in Medford are investigating at least one patient death at the Rogue Regional Medical Center, Sante Rogue Regional Medical Center. But it seems like there's probably, from reports, anywhere from 8, 9, up to 10 deaths that have occurred there since 2022, cause of which is related to infections at the hospital. And the cause of these infections has to do with the nurse who is switching medication with tap water. And multiple sources say that this nurse injected these patients with tap water in an attempt to cover up. They wrote, it's funny how they wrote there. I wonder if that's their pronouns. But anyway, attempt to cover up the nurse's misuse of the hospital's supply of pain medication. This was a female nurse, I believe. I think it got leaked out. The medication, specifically fentanyl. And so,
well, that's a surprise.
Yeah. So what happens is this happened in the intensive care unit, the ICU. They think between 9 and 10 people died from these fatal infections. And, most of the people are sort of mum about this whole thing.
Just give me a break here. So she's stealing fentanyl, right? Which if the patient's in the ICU, they, whatever, they may be paralyzed. They may be, so the fentanyl may be super helpful. It may not be. But then she doesn't just like inject, like steal normal saline that's sterile, where she can just inject it. She gets freaking tap water.
Yeah.
And so the patients didn't die from a tap water injection, which they wouldn't if it was an IV push of tap water. They died of the tap water because it was not sterile and they got infections.
Exactly. And so
she's a drug addict and a dipshit is what you're saying.
Well, she's not alone because this happens sadly frequently. But basically, you're right. The Pseudomonas came from the unsterile tap water, contaminated in small amounts. And so at this point, let me just get to the part that what happened was one person developed I think a septic pneumonia. But there's all kinds of liver failure, all kinds of organ failure, including like liver failure, other kidney failure that can happen from infections from unsterile water. Pseudomonas is one of them.
Pseudomonas for sure.
In the past, I did a bunch of reading, staph, and other kinds of really rare bacteria. I had to kind of research all these cases.
How did they figure that out? Some of these bacteria
I hadn't heard of it. How they figured it out is someone. I'm trying to think how exactly. I'm not sure from the reading if someone spoke up, but here's what I do know. So the FBI, obviously DEA, everybody's investigating it. It's published at the Oregon Medical Board. So this story started breaking around 2022 when there was a bunch of news articles that come up from the hospital and talk about hospitals keep track of their infection rate in ICUs and surgical units, and
which they should. That is a very good thing to.
Right. So,
and they had a massive spike.
They did. So,
and then they looked at the spike and they went, "Where the hell's the spike coming from?"
So they
is there a particular shift that's jacking up the rates because a nurse is picking her rear or picking her nose or or their nose? And
so allegedly, the first case that I found was a family member thinking back to, I think it was the summer of 2022, but for sure by December of 2022,
it's the summer of 69.
It was reported that their case rates of central line associated bloodstream infections rose significantly. And it's documented that it went up.
So she's not just injecting this into IVs. She's injecting it into freaking central lines, which is the fastest way to make people okay.
Yeah, and it looked like
she's not the smartest drug addict on the street. I'm telling you, she's not.
Yeah, it spiked went from
it's unbelievably crazy,
less than 1% up to like over 3%, and then I read that it basically what happened was
so it's potentially a 400 or 500% increase in infections.
And the other thing that happened was they have the here we go. This rapid rise in central line infections occurred, and they were tracking it. Apparently, they had a 5-fold increase from 2021 to 2022, and then OHSU has so they're the tertiary care center. They have
quaternary care center.
Oh, there you go. My bad. And OHSU's rate of central line infections so it's been it's at a standard rate, and they compared it to that because this Medford is the 7th largest hospital in Oregon. It was having even higher rates of central line infections. So
then the place where the Sicky von Sickerson people go to. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's
so it was like exponentially high, and they're like, "What's happening?"
So did she confess, or did they? Like, how did they actually?
No. So what happened initially was then they posted the healthcare system's posting all these articles about how, well, there's water quality problems in the hospital, thinking that there was something in the water. People are drinking it and getting sick. Anyway, I'm not sure if she confessed. Nobody's is saying exactly what happened, but it's pretty sad. And apparently they've been getting numerous calls from family members thinking that their loved one died that way from a bizarre central line infection, and so it seems like there might be.
The thing that's interesting about this, and I'm gonna take a completely completely off the reservation tack on this. The thing that's amazing is civilized societies, especially free civilized societies, are based on trust, and so we put in barricades to maintain trust. So the nurse has to go to school, has to graduate school, has to become licensed, has to maintain licensure with examinations, has to do, continuing nursing education, has to, is subject to penalty, criminal penalty, civil penalty. So there's all these checks and balances, but it's still trust, right? And the fact is, if you're really smart, it's not really hard to breach the trust, especially in an ICU where it's one-on-one nursing and no one's watching you. Right. It's really difficult to get away with that in an open system. When I'm seeing 40 patients a day in an urgent care, you can only be obnoxious to so many people before the system breaks down and they're like, this guy's a jerk, and there's some gazillion complaints.
Right.
But in a closed unit, if you don't ruffle feathers, it really is. It's almost amazing that this kind of stuff doesn't happen more.
Oh, but it does, and that's where I was going to go. And so what happens? What happens is when you have somebody with close exposure to drugs, whether it's in healthcare, the police force, ambulance workers, frontline workers, anybody that's able to handle drugs of abuse like this, when they substitute for something else and use it, it's called drug diversion. And actually, it's a lot more common than you would, think. Maybe people aren't surprised. But, and you can Google this and look it up on the CDC, or if you trust them, or anywhere else about drug diversion. And of course, prescription narcotics are going to be the big one. Injectable things like fentanyl, narcotics, and various others pose a big risk. So get this. I started to look up about drug diversion. I couldn't find exact stats on the numbers and how common it is. But hang on, you're blocking my view here.
No, I know, but your view's so big I can't read the comments.
Well, we'll get to the comments in a minute. So what's the biggest infection associated with this? So, we said that Pseudomonas came from the water, staph infections, but actually the most common infection that happens through drug diversion to the patients is hepatitis C. And I was like, interesting.
Well, right.
So
because it's one drug addict diverting drugs to a person that has never used IV drugs.
But the issue is, so how does it get transmitted? I mean, just because they're taking care of them, how is it?
No, it's inject. It has to be
through injection. Guess what happens? So I went and dug deeper, and I started reading some of these published cases. And yes, in one case, hepatitis C infection associated with an emergency, I think it's emergency department or ICU. No, it was an X-ray tech. This is what happened. They said that what they would do is that they would take the fentanyl-laden syringe. You often have a big syringe on it. They would take the syringe off, put on a small syringe. Needle. Put on a small needle. Inject the fentanyl. Take that small needle off that they used. Replace it with the large one. And then draw up saline.
Makes perfect sense.
Pick your substance. And then voila, I was ready to go. Now there's going to be backflow of blood in there. It's contaminated. And that's how frequently patients are getting hepatitis C transmission, because they're actually using it and then putting it back.
If you could prove that, how big would the frickin' lawsuit be against the hospital system that gave you hepatitis C because their worker was a drug addict that you did not figure out? I seriously, maybe I will go back to law school, because I have these fantasies of standing in front of a jury and saying to hospital administrators, do you randomly drug test your employees? Well, no, we test them for cause. Oh, so you wait until they're wasted to determine whether or not they're safe to take care of people. So let me get this straight. So you put people into a situation where they are surrounded by stress. They are surrounded by some of the most intense situations in humanity. And oh, that's right, they have open access to the strongest pharmaceuticals in the world. And you don't randomly drug test them.
Yeah.
You get randomly drug tested to work at frickin' McDonald's, but you don't do it when you have people surrounded by drugs, surrounded by stress, surrounded by all sorts of insanity. You don't do that. Why? Because you don't want to know. You don't want to know who's using drugs because you know they're using drugs. I rest my case. Seriously. I get tingly thinking of doing that.
Anesthesia is
it's 100% the case.
Massive
they don't want to know. They don't randomly test. They randomly test you in the NFL. They randomly test you in the Olympics. They randomly test. I think they actually randomly test pilots, which makes perfect sense. You can kill 500 people at one time.
Mm-hmm.
They don't randomly test in hospital healthcare.
They don't.
Because they don't want to know who's smoking weed.
And if they
don't want to know who did a line of coke on the weekend. They don't want to know because they know it's out there.
If you work somewhere where they do, I want to know. So hang on a second. I think your friend called and just blew up our connection.
No, he did not blow the connection. He blew them.
So text him and tell him to join the show.
I'll text him and tell him to join the show.
To quit fragging our program. All right. Well, as Tim does that, what I want to do is get to some comments here. Absolutely, Jason. Reverend Tim is preaching, ranting, and providing entertainment for you all. But yes, to Stacy's questions, she's asked if either one of us have worked with someone in the medical field that we had questionable thoughts about them doing things unprofessional. I absolutely did. In fact, I can tell this story. I won't say names. This person I don't think ever practiced. Well, I should say quickly was out of practice of medicine. But when I was an intern, we were in groups of 3 on our call schedule.
Oh, I know where this is going.
There, myself and 2 other guys, and every 3rd night we spent the night at the hospital. I'm mostly awake. That's how it went for a whole year. Yes, times have changed, but we were in groups of 3. That's what it was. This group of 3 of us. Well, I came to I was on Friday night stayed over the night in the hospital. Friday night call. That was my shift. Friday night. Saturday morning, usually around noon, we might get to go home on the weekends because there was no teaching on the weekend. And in walked my one of my 2 partners to relieve me. It was his shift to do Saturday. He was supposed to be there actually by 8, and we would hand off. He came a little late. I was mad. He showed up, massive alcohol in his breath, completely and totally inebriated. And I'm like, you ain't working.
So how did you handle that?
And I handled that by...
You told them you were a drunk ass, get away from patients.
I said, forget it. Called the attending. I think we got one of the higher up residents to supervise that rest of that shift. And the other guy, I think, maybe came in. There was an ongoing problem.
And then magically he was not in residency.
So that wasn't the first light of any problems. But I was like, oh no, man, there is no bloody way. So
that was the same guy that instead of actually writing out an actual like history and physical that he did, he just took one out of an old chart and just shoved it in the new chart.
Yeah, it's sad because he was very, he had potential to be a good doctor, but that was sad. And I hope he got help. But so right off the bat, yeah, he was gone. Thinking of anything further on down, I mean, that one, how could I forget that? Further on down the line, I remember hearing cases of people, other things about them doing
I've
things
never
that
seen,
were not professional.
I've kind of heard of stuff. I mean,
like directly.
I mean, what's the definition of unprofessional? Like telling a joke that...
Well, having sex with a colleague in, the closet.
Oh yeah, no, that happened. That happened.
Mm-hmm.
That happened at a hospital we worked at. That happened with a hospital. No, like, no, I mean that. We could talk about it. It's public. Like the one is 100%
where we were
public.
Involved and had to like blow the whistle.
I mean, we had a neurosurgeon that was a methamphetamine addict. That's entirely public because it went through the entire board of medical examiners. There was, I mean, yeah, it happens. I mean, doctors are people and they make the same mistakes that everyone makes.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think I haven't thought about this a lot.
That's the only one where I blew the whistle.
I had never had to blow the whistle on anybody. I mean, a lot of it's gossip and stories and bullshit and whatever. But I think it's pretty insane. I think it's pretty insane that if you drive an 18-wheeler, you have 15 minutes if you're called to do a random drug test, because it makes sense. You can kill a lot of people with an 18-wheeler. But if you have direct contact with patients, with lots of patients, especially in a hospital where you have direct ability to divert drugs, that does not get randomly drug tested. I know of no place. Tell me if anyone knows anywhere in the United States where hospitals randomly drug test people. I think they should.
I just had another thought. There was one other person later in my career that I worked with that shared their medical info. This was a coworker that shared their medical information with me, all of it, and how they were struggling and what medications they were taking daily and what they took even when they were going to work to make it through the day. Prescription medications, multiple sedating, impairing cognitive function. And I was like, I don't know. I kind of kept a close eye on things, but that person didn't stay very long either. And that was, there was nothing really, I would say.
I mean, I remember we had a executive level meeting about somebody who was prescribed chronic opioids for pain back when we thought that was a good idea. And it was like, well, it's within the parameters of what we would do for anybody else. So I kind of agreed with that, but there's a point where you kind of go, shouldn't you be treating doctors the same as pilots? Like really? I mean, honestly, the number of decisions I make, even in an urgent care where, most of the things we see are self-limited illnesses like colds. But when you're seeing 4,000 or 5,000 patient encounters a year, okay, and when you're flying an airplane, there is, honest to God, an auto land button. So if it's really cloudy and you can't see the runway, but you're still within the FAA limits of being able to land, you can push the auto land button and the plane lands itself.
But here's the other thing. They also limit the hours that they work.
Correct.
Because they know that you need to be alert. And if you said, I'm not fit for work, they would say, okay, you're grounded. Now, in the medical profession, and I will tell you how many times have I worked with a severe migraine, even like laid down in a room, even called and said a couple of times. Remember, we've been sick, and I call in and I'm like, I have like severe diarrhea. You don't want me coming to work. Well, do you think you might be able to make it in like later today? I'm like, hello, how about like 48 hours of symptom free? I mean, come on.
No, they're
like, well, can you just try to come to work, even though you might be not, they don't want to ask, are you safe to work? And I'm saying, I'm not safe to work. And it's basically, well, can you still come to work?
No, that's.
I'm like, if the doctor's
that's
saying
what it's been. I mean, I
think
that might be changing now, but I mean, resources in healthcare, especially physician resources, are far thinner than they've been. I mean, the supply and demand is far in the demand side, not the supply side, and it really is fascinating because when you take a big picture look at it, when you look back at our 30 some years of doing this, and you go, holy shit, this is really insane. Some of the ways we do things, like it's actually amazing that more bad things, that there isn't more Dr. Denches out there doing there's so much money involved. There's such a high volume of demand for care, and there's so little policing when it really comes down to. There's very little policing.
Errors there are by people.
Well, I mean, they throw this around about iatrogenic fatalities is how much medical errors kill. Well, I don't know how much is just dumb drugs kill. I mean, that's sort of different.
I'm thinking if you are like not fit for work because you're, I don't know, overtired, overworked, on medication, sick.
No,
it's the impact.
No, totally. I get it. No, I get it. Anyway. It's so I was on the board of directors of a medium-sized healthcare system. And we're sitting in the boardroom, and the CEO, who's actually a really cool guy, and I'm still friends with, he says, we need to be more like the airline industry. And, because when the surgical specialties started to adopt airline-style checklists, who's the patient, this is their name, what leg are we operating on? Like it really decreased, it decreased wrong side surgeries. It was very good. And I'm like, okay, so he's going to say that we need to be more like the airline industry and all of healthcare. And I'm like, well, it's impossible because the surgical suite mimics flying an airplane. Seeing patients in ER is it's total chaos. There's no regimented thing you can do. So then I came out and I said to this august board, I said, okay, then let's treat all of our providers like pilots. Let's say you can't work more than 18 hours in a week. If you work more than 12 hours in a shift,
stop right there.
You're going to get a mandatory 8 hours off before you ever see a patient. We'll randomly drug screen them. And, oh yeah, why don't we do that? And they looked at me and I said, because a pilot can kill 500 people at once. We only kill people one at a time. Mm-hmm. And then they looked at me like I had 8 heads because I was a dick. But you know what? It's exactly the truth.
No, it's totally the truth. Yes. Anyway, well.
Healthcare, killing patients one at a time.
I beat that horse. That story.
No, that was a very good tangent. Some tangents, Tangent Oregon, not great. Other tangents, fantastic. This tangent was fantastic.
It's so bad in Oregon right now that I'm hoping you'll stay warm. But the trees will kill you.
The trees have assisted suicide. It's ice-assisted suicide. The tree. I follow this Instagram page called WTF Portland, and it's just like the last week has been trees falling on Porsches and falling on people's houses and getting full of ice and like destroying power lines. It's just, and I'm bitching because it was 70 today.
Well, it's a damp cold.
It's a damp cold.
And that damn cold. Damn cold. It's cold. It was cloudy. It was very reminiscent of Oregon. Drizzly, cloudy, and
it was reminiscent of Oregon in June. That's the difference.
Anyway, our thoughts and prayers and safety.
Yes, because I know what it's like to live in the woods and have an amazing property and not have power. And all of a sudden, all the romance is gone. It's kind of like that, women after the honeymoon, that first time.
But you don't want to snuggle up in bed?
When your husband, when you see him take his underwear off and flick it into the air with his foot and then grab it and thinks that he is the coolest guy and somehow that's the most sexually attractive thing in the world. And you're like, I married Bozo the Clown. And every woman has experienced that.
Pretty much.
Well, every married woman has experienced that.
I'm going to get you I have a no Christmas. My brain just went down another trail as everybody's laughing about the foot underwear flip story.
It's a real thing. It should be an Olympic sport.
Well, I'm just not. I'm not. I'm just
should be an Olympic sport.
Pleading the fifth. I'm just going to let everybody comment.
And an Olympic sport.
There you go. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to take a sip of my fine wine and share a little bit about this weekend. We went out on my date. It was my turn for the date. There was no cars involved other than driving them as a utility tool to get from A to B. Church was followed by wine tasting. And
we went from Jesus juice.
We did
to Jesus
because
juice.
It was Communion Sunday.
Yes, it was Jesus.
And I'm like,
to Jesus juice.
This is pretty cute little convenient shooter cup that they gave us. Well, then I found.
Can you imagine if the Bible was different and it wasn't the Last Supper, it was the last wine tasting?
The last wine tasting. Oh, well, I want to start a women's Bible study.
This charcuterie board.
I want to start a women's Bible study with the group that's going to be called the First Miracles Club. And you know what that's going to be all about. But, okay, we went to Cooper's Hawk winery. They have a restaurant. They originated up in Illinois, out of Chicago. They're down here and all over the place. And I'm like, chain, is it going to be Chipotle with wine? It's
no, because
amazing.
then we'd all die.
Okay, so we did the wine tasting. The people there that work there are amazing, having fun. They love their job, great service. Alyssa was our server. She was fun, and we chatted it up. The place was packed on a Sunday. We met some great people, got to chat with a couple, and Tim and Beth are new friends. You were bonding over music. My favorite wine is what I'm drinking is their Cab Zin. So far, it's my favorite of what I tasted.
Scott.
Oh, yes. I thought his name was Tim. That was, never mind. Someone else we met. There was 2 Tims. Yes, no. I'm sorry if he's listening. Cheers with the Cab Zin. So,
Cab Zin.
They source their grapes from all over, mostly the U.S., and then they produce their own wine. So it's nice because they don't have to have their own vineyards. This one, I think, is a California blend of Cab and Zinfandel grapes. And so they have something different all the time. So we might be bringing you more. I would love it if they would be our sponsor. So
Cooper's Hawk.
I never even thought of that. But,
well, it took me about 4 seconds to change it to Cooper's Cock, but that's another story.
What?
Well, it's funny.
Anyway, so yes, a very nice.
They could have a little rooster, like Rossignol skis, as the symbol.
Instead of a hawk, I think the hawk is more elegant than the cock.
Yeah,
those ones get pretty ornery.
They do.
They like to peck
anyone
you. They like to peck you.
Anyone who's had a rooster realizes why you kill them.
Exactly.
Because they are evil. They are like they're really bad.
Okay, well, I'm going to share my weird medical condition quickly, and then you can leave on the funny note of the night.
Yeah, it's
because you like to leave them laughing.
Almost dying is hilarious.
Yes. So let's get to it. All right. Tonight we are talking about this, and it's, not just from the Addams family. It's called alien hand syndrome, the hand that just does its own thing. And I'm pretending I have that now. See? So basically, it's
I'll have that 100% of the time you're naked. Oh, it's alien hand syndrome. I got sudden onset. The something or other I got injected with gave me involuntary hand movement.
Where it doesn't know where it's going. That's right. You got it.
Alien hand syndrome.
Yeah. So this is a rare condition that was first described in 1908. And I think it was a woman at that time had this condition. It's basically where you lose control of your limb, usually your hand, and the motions can vary depending on what part of the brain is involved. And there's usually 3 various forms. But basically, the hand just seems to do its own thing. People can't control it, kind of like split personality.
Right. But does it do its own thing, like just randomly flop around? Or does it actually do stuff like flip people off and
everything? So they're unnecessary, inappropriate at the time.
Yeah, I think it's bullshit.
No, it's not. So here's what happens. There was a sudden rise in the 1940s of this condition, which associated with, any thoughts?
Bullshit.
No. Treatment for epilepsy with surgical procedures of the brain. They were at the time cutting the corpus callosum, which is the fiber straight down the middle of the brain that connects the left and right hemispheres. And they noticed that there was a bunch of people developed this. And what's happening is the connections in the brain don't communicate properly. And what happens is then there's this disassociation between what the brain wants to do and also what the motor cortex or the part of the brain does do. So without getting too techie and having a neurobiology lesson, there are 3 different parts of the brain involved. Can be the frontal part, motor cortex. There's the back, which controls involuntary movements, and the middle of the corpus callosum. And so what happens with some forms is the right hand will actually start groping or feeling people, things inappropriately. There's another form in which the hand will basically carry out things like, for instance, you look at a coffee cup and you go, yeah, your brain's like, yeah, I would pick that coffee cup up. Well, the hand would just see you look at the cup and it just goes out to get it. It's almost like it's a memory. It knows what it's supposed to do and it does it on its own without you shutting off that action.
So does Biden's dementia give him alien sniffing syndrome?
That's why I said so. Now, more commonly, this will be associated with conditions like strokes, aneurysms, brain tumors, malignancies, neurodegenerative conditions. But it's pretty sad and debilitating. And there's not like, you can do diagnostic tests for it, MRI, CT, but pretty much it's pretty obvious. And so what happens is there's ways people find helpful to deal with it. One is actually keeping that hand busy. So a lot of people will carry or have a cane, and that keeps your hand occupied so that it knows it has to do something and stay mobile. Or they'll have something like, I don't know, one of those squeezy balls or something to do to keep it going. But
or if you're 5 and a male, you just stick it down your pants.
Yes. But sometimes apparently people start unintentionally unbutton their shirt, grab, doing things that are exposing.
It's like,
themselves.
I just had 4 drinks now. My alien hand is unbuttoning my shirt.
So I guess these episodes can last up to 30 minutes and not just seconds. So quite frightening. So if you see my hand, just reach out and slap you in the face.
It's not. I think it's real, but I think that, it's just like, it's like that gal that had Tourette's and was on what's his name, Como's show on Newsmax or News whatever his new show.
I don't think so.
And he was, and she was just like, she's just calling him and like she's flipping him off, and that's supposed to be part of Tourette's. And I'm like, no, they're involuntary tics. You're not flipping people off and calling somebody swear words.
Well,
it's
true.
involuntary.
No, but get this. Apparently, this one guy, what did I read? He would wake up in the middle of the night because his hand kept grabbing his body while he was trying to sleep and doing stuff.
Well, that makes sense.
So he finally had to put an oven mitt on his hand to sleep.
Okay, I'm done. I'm taking the 5th on this. I'm not saying another thing.
Now we're laughing at this. Obviously, that'd be horrible.
It would be horrible.
And
there is another disease which I'm not going to say anything about. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to see if it's real, and we're going to talk about it because it's the same thing like this.
Oh, but is it like an alien hand that was doing inappropriate things?
No, it's way better than that.
Anyway,
way better. Just like Jeffrey Heim. Jeffrey Heim.
Well,
the luckiest or unluckiest man in the world. So Jeffrey Heim has this very successful website / I don't know what it is, foundation, where he searches for megalodon teeth. Now, megalodon teeth are enormous. So they're shark teeth from megalodons, which are these giant sharks.
I was going to say, it sounds like a dinosaur.
Yes. And they're littered in Florida, like literally in the ground everywhere, because the entire state of Florida was under the ocean. And all you have to do is live here for 15 minutes. And you realize, yes, it's all a beach that was under the ocean at some point. So these megalodon teeth are enormous. Like the picture I'm looking at, he's holding one and it's way bigger than his head. And it's a shark tooth.
Really?
Yes.
Bigger than his head?
Yes. Like way bigger. Like it's almost as big as his chest.
What? Look at that.
Yeah. So he's big into this shark preservation and finding megalodon teeth and whatnot.
I've never heard of megalodons.
Yeah. Oh, you need to watch Shark Week.
Apparently.
You're wasting your life. Apparently. You need to watch more television.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, he decided that he would swim in the Miaka River, which is actually not very far from here.
Very close.
Very, very close. And be diving for megalodon teeth, because in the sediment, the water moves it and it just kind of continuously filters. So it's a perfect place to look for megalodon teeth. It's also a perfect place to have an alligator bite you on the head, which is exactly what happened. An 8-foot alligator bit this guy on the head. What saved him? Well, the same thing that saves all of us.
He used the tooth as a weapon?
His GoPro, like, kind of jacked up the mouth of the alligator, he thinks, and it released. And then he had like this stare down with the alligator. So the guy has literally a gigantic flap of scalp flopping and bleeding into the water. And he remembers that if you thrash around and get scared, they know that you're prey and then they'll eat you. So then he just stares at this thing and backs away slowly, and it swims away. And then he eventually gets medical help and he's fine. So this happened 2 years ago. So this story has resurfaced because it was recently on a Florida news show where they interviewed him for about 15 minutes. So it was very in depth. But the story gets even weirder. So what happens is when people get attacked by alligators, Florida Fish and Game tries to go in and find the alligator and rehome it. Like they put it in a zoo or they take it down to the Everglades or whatever. So that because look, if you're in freshwater in Florida, you're in their home. That's the reality.
Yeah.
That's their house.
Maybe he needed rehoming.
Well, no, he understood that. And he said, don't kill it. I mean, that's ridiculous. Just, So they went and they found it and they snared it and they were going to rehome it. And it's 8 feet long. So it's not small, but it is of reasonable size. And it's a female. So it may have had small little gatorlings to take care of, and, of course, Daddy Gator comes home drunk every night, and it's a long story. The Fish and Game people are telling him this story, and it's like, yeah, well, we found it. She was 8 feet long. We snared her. We were bringing her into the boat so that we could relocate her to another place, and a 14-foot alligator came and ate her beside the boat. Chewed on her head, chewed her guts open, killed her, and then followed the Fish and Game guys all the way back to the dock. And so it has an unbelievably sad ending.
I did not know they did that.
No, they're extremely territorial.
Oh.
So they mess with each other significally.
Wow.
Because they're largely scavengers. Right.
Yeah,
and so scavengers are they're opportunistic. Like, a bird dies and falls into the water. Boom. They want to get it. Well, if you're a scavenger, what's the biggest threat to you eating? Another scavenger. Right. So if you're the biggest, baddest dude in town, you're always eating first. Plus gator meat is quite tasty. And I think they eat babies with some regularity.
Wow.
But don't quote me. I am not an aquatic biologist. So yes, it is.
Well, I just hope they keep having some territorial fights around here to keep the population thinned. The only fights I've seen is some squirrel fights for some nuts on the road.
D's. They
like to fight over D's nuts.
D's nuts. Doesn't everyone? No, but it was.
Wow. Did not know that.
Yes, So when we were water skiing with barefooting with them, and you would see gators in the lake
with them.
Well, yes, I mean
home.
They would be sitting on the edge, like they'd be in the water. You'd see the eyes, and you're in the water and the boat. Like they look at the boat as a 22-foot alligator, so they don't want to screw with you. They don't like that. It's not like they're going to swim out away from the edge of the shore and attack you because you just happen to be in the water, because largely you're a threat to them. So, yeah, unless
but
unless you're swimming in the water like a manatee, looking for megalodon teeth, in which case your head has become an hors d'oeuvre.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't float on an air, like, what do you call those? Like an inflatable with your cocktail in a freshwater pond near the
No.
You getting your hands and feet dangled in it like food.
And, you can smack them on the snout and stuff. But, an inflatable, especially if you coat it with pork tallow, would probably be in mushroom and marshmallows would be ill-advised. Remember that place, that airboat place we went to?
Yeah. If you want to see gators, just throw marshmallows in.
They throw, they hear the airboat and they just come hauling ass towards the airboat because they know when the airboat comes, so does the diabetes because they're going to be throwing the marshmallows.
It reminds me of that horrific video on it's a National Geographic thing on YouTube. If you look up some island full of snakes, island with the largest amount, I can't remember that.
Oh, that one where that little lizard
and
is
there's a little lizard pops out and all these snakes come out chasing the thing and just, it is so creepy. That's kind of what made me think of when the airboat comes out with the marshmallows and they can hear it and sniff them and away they come.
Well, yeah, because they're essentially obligate scavengers. So
have you seen any gator bites yet, Tim, at the office?
No. So where people get in trouble with these things is they feed them because they think it's cool. Well, and then they become dependent on being fed, and then they associate humans with food, and then they attack people.
You mean just like putting your cat food outside your door and the raccoons coming at night and getting it, and then you beating a raccoon off with
Whoa, beating a raccoon off. Yes. No, they have hands. They can do that themselves.
You didn't let me finish. Well, I just should stop talking. Okay.
They have hands.
Trying to beat the raccoon with a broom or other substance.
Yes, they become pepper spray. I
did that.
Very ornery.
Quick story, because I'm not a good storyteller. But there was a raccoon, and we like to look at them on our back deck. I was looking at through the window. I'm like, oh, stupid things eating the cat food. And I was ticked. So I ran out there one foggy, warm night. And I'm like, I'm going to get this sucker. And I had my pepper spray. I'm like, I'm going to just spray him because I didn't have the gun handy and you were gone. So I ran out and he was on the deck and I shot the pepper spray at him. And then he kind of backed up a couple feet and sneered at me some more. And I'm like, I'm going to get you even better. So what did I do? I ran towards him. And as I did that, because the air was foggy, and when it's foggy and all the moisture just hangs in the air, so does the pepper spray, which meant I went right through that cloud of pepper spray. And the second I stepped through it and started feeling the pain in my eyes and nose and mouth, and then I went to spray him and he took off, and I started laughing and crying tears at the same time because I'm like, such an idiot. I ran through my own cloud of pepper spray. Yes, I did that. Anyway, we got lots of raccoon stories, shooting them, killing them, beating them, but that was my stupid pet. So do not spray pepper spray and then run through it on a...
I shot that one out of a tree with a 9mm. That was actually, I was proud of myself, my marksmanship duties.
So anyway...
That thing was diseased. It had no tail. It's like it got in a fight. It had zero tail.
You're lucky you didn't catch rabies, or I would have been giving you 10 shots in the abdomen every day. What's coming out on the podcast? Well, today, actually, since we changed Doctales to Thursday instead of Wednesday.
Not every Thursday, just this Thursday. And then, we'll see what happens.
We're just going to go with the flow for this 2024 season. We have great guests, some great interviews. In today's episode, you want to share what that was?
Freed. Yes, medical technology using AI to produce notes.
So all of you that
Why does it matter, not just to doctors, but to patients? We go deep with the CEO and developer of Freed, Erez Drews.
Yeah.
What a fun, he was a really cool guy.
But you know what? It's pretty cool just to, if you're not in healthcare, just to listen to it, because everybody hates it when the doctor is typing away at the computer. This technology literally... It's like you just pretend it's not there. You talk to the patient. You walk out. Boom. Note done. I love it. So huge potential. Anyway.
Yeah, the only thing I can see a problem with is it has to hear things to interpret it. So when you're doing a physical exam, you kind of have to say,
verbalize what you're doing. Correct.
Yes. This exceptionally
I'm thinking
ugly.
I should just get you that program so that you could just talk all day long and you'd have a book or a whole encyclopedia written before we knew it.
The problem with the physical exam is you go, patient who smells like marijuana and ass presents with.
Yeah. We should have asked him about that. How do you edit it later? I mean, you can edit things later, but
well, you can do the physical whenever you want it. But I mean, you
can edit it anyway. So check out that episode. And any other thoughts for the week? Sign up for our Truth Serum newsletter with some
next week
blatherings and thoughts for the week from me.
Next week,
sometimes Tim.
I will be in. The plan is I shall be in Utah skiing, so we may be doing this from 2 different locations.
Well, wouldn't that be a treat?
Yes.
You can do some grounding episodes or avalanche safety.
You have to. Yeah, they killed someone in California this year.
You could do a talk on that.
Yeah, they killed someone in California this year.
Wow.
In a ski resort with an avalanche, which just never happens. It was at a ski resort.
Ew.
Yeah, in Tahoe. So that's bad. Don't let that happen to you.
So we'll see what things transpire over the next week. And of course, we love hearing from our audience and our followers. And anyway, reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, and email. As always, message us, doc@bsfreemd.com.
Yes. All right. That's it for this week. We'll see you again next week. Stay BS free if you can. And if you can't, don't say anything. Otherwise,
lessons from the Pope here on that.
Yes. All right. Later.
It's no secret that medicine is a bit uptight. That's why Tim and I created BS Free MD to mix things up a little and have fun in the process. Besides, we are having these exact same discussions all the time, so we thought we might as well invite everyone to the party. If you really like us, you can get plenty more and maybe see one of Tim's cool tattoos on our Instagram or Facebook pages at BS Free MD. See you next time.
Well, we try to keep BS Free MD as raw and real as possible. We can't be held responsible for any medical decisions or discussions had as a result of what you've heard on the show. We know, bummer. But the truth is, we really do care about your questions. So feel free to reach out to us by email at doc@bsfreemd.com.